Just because yesterday scored a victory in terms of the Second Amendment and the God-given right to self-defense doesn't mean that the left is going to stand idly by. No, they're coming at us even harder, and what they're going to do is come at us with these three narratives that we must combat immediately if we're going to have any chance of restoring liberty to our country. We're going to talk about these three things and more, and we're going to start right now. Hello, my name is Kyle and welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the Rittenhouse verdict yesterday and why it's so important that we go over the three narratives that must be debunked following that particular verdict. This comes to us from J.D. Rucker from the Liberty Daily. It's a fantastic article. He goes over these three narratives and we're going to go over them right now. And why it's so important is because the left never takes a vacation. They're not saying, well, you know what, we're going to just give up now and let the conservatives, the people who love this country and the liberty that has been bestowed upon us by the foundations of our documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, we're going to let those, we're going to say, you know what, you guys win, we're going to give up. No, they're going to keep pushing forward. There's a mantra that's been being pushed by liberals and leftists for decades. It goes this way. It's not about the issue. It's always about the revolution. They're always pushing the ball forward, even if they have to take a couple steps back. Here it says in the article here, today, for at least a part of it, we celebrate. Goes on to say here, justice was not swayed by the ugly demands of mob rule or threats of domestic terrorism as the verdict came down. You may have seen the Instagram live feed that I did yesterday, shortly after this verdict came down. In that, I talk about mob rule. If you missed that, I'll leave a link below. But essentially, the mob rule is not what this country was founded on. We are a constitutional republic. Again, go check out for yourself what that means. But essentially, it means that God and morals is the overarching framework in which all laws must come through and be governed by. So, let's hear that. Unfortunately, the celebration for the delivery of a young man to the freedom he deserves will be short-lived because under normal circumstances, I would mark this down as the jury has spoken. Remember back in the day when the jury would make a decision, everyone would say, yeah, you know what? We didn't like it, but the jury has spoken. It's in our Constitution and our laws, and that's just what it is. But now they're trying to try this in the area of big tech, through politics, through even judicial investigations. They're talking about reining this in and changing laws and making it so that this can't happen again, where a person who is tried by his peers or her peers cannot get a fair trial. So here, three narratives that are already stemming from the verdict that must be fought with everything we've got. The left, backed by most in government, all of mainstream media, and the lion's share of big tech community are attempting to use this verdict as a springboard from which they can launch their agendas. Again, remember, it's not the issue. It's always about the revolution. These guys are continually fighting forward, regardless of what setbacks they have. They're continually pushing the ball forward, and we can never take a rest. We must always be diligent in attacking that and suppressing that. False narrative number one. This is about white supremacy. Now, this is probably the easiest one to debunk because, first of all, the two men he killed were white. The other man he shot was white. And this whole thing came about domestic terrorists burning down a city over a black man who went to the home of one of his sexual assault victims, resisted arrest, presented a weapon, and was shot by police as a result. His situation was clearly not racially biased either. And I love how he puts this here. Therefore, the only thing that could possibly tie this to white supremacy is the fact that the justified shooting of a black man prompted the domestic terrorism that led to white men getting shot by another white man. Perfectly framed there. And so they always want to spin this on racism, and don't let them do it. Okay, do not let them get away with that, because that is an asinine argument, and it's all fueled by emotion and misinformation, which I will get into in a second, because the misinformation in this trial is incredible. And I'm going to put this up here on the screen right here. This is from Dinesh D'Souza. He framed it here in a really, really good way. He has here, the Rittenhouse was a white supremacist, lie number one. He had no family in Kenosha, lie number two. He had an illegal gun, lie number 3. Rittenhouse chased the rioters, lie number 4. And the rioters did not attack him, lie number 5. And we can really get into all of those on our own separate video, but that just shows you that the misinformation that's out there, which is causing people to call this racism, is astronomical. That's what I'm talking about. If the media were to tell the truths, those 5 truths that were put there by Dinesh, then a lot of this goes away, but that's not what they want. They want to push forth a narrative. They want to push forth an agenda. Remember, it's always about the revolution. False narrative number 2. If laws couldn't convict Kyle Rittenhouse, then laws must change. This, simply put, is a gun-grabbing, self-defense, Second Amendment, right to defense type of false narrative. Because here, it was the proper education of a young man based on the laws that led to his acquittal. That does not mean that the laws are in need of fixing, but the left will try to paint it as such. They will say something to the effect, if a 17-year-old can murder people on the streets with no consequences, then the laws must be changed. That is silly. Okay, it says here that this false narrative is one that will be hammered down by mainstream media for weeks. The Democrat lawmakers are already screaming about it in attempts to focus verdict-inspired anger toward the tangible recourse through new gun laws. That's all this is. Remember, it's not about the issue. It's always about the revolution. They're going to push forward no matter how illogical it is. This case has always been about a combination of social justice and putting the Second Amendment on trial. It's not about vigilante justice. It can be used against our right to defend ourselves, and we must not let them make this narrative stick. You see how dastardly these people are? That's what they're trying to do. And watch in the news in the next few weeks what happens from this. False narrative number 3. Mostly peaceful protesters were rightfully outraged. Well, before I get into this, let me bring up an image here of this so-called peaceful protest. Do you remember these people? I'm gonna leave this up on the screen here. You can look them up for yourselves, but I'm gonna point out a couple of them here. So David Dorn, as you know, was killed in St. Louis during the riots there. He was trying to protect and defend the area. He was called in there at night. He went there and was gunned down by unfortunately, a domestic terrorist. And that right there went pretty much unheard in the media. And also, let's talk about Burnell Trammell down at the bottom right there. This gentleman was a Trump supporter in Milwaukee. He was gunned down. And all these people were killed in these so-called peaceful protests. Not to mention the massive burning of the cities and the billions of dollars of property damage that happened. And so that right there can be debunked just on the evidence there. But it says here, and I agree, that their evidence is not understandable. It's manufactured. Exactly. It's virtual signaling, and it's used to manipulate, to shut down discussion. Remember, it's not about the issue. It's always about the revolution. It isn't righteous. It's evil. And that's a whole rabbit trail we can go down, but I agree there as well. The destruction of property and violence that ensues must be called out for exactly what it is, domestic terrorism. We did a video last year. We took an interview from the great Thomas Sowell talking about the only way to stop a riot. But if you missed that, here's a clip that we put together yesterday.
Causes these riots. Once they get started, the governor does the wrong thing.
Yes.
But what starts them?
Oh, anything can start a riot. The question is, how do you stop them? And James Q. Wilson once said the only thing that will stop the riot is overwhelming force on the scene.
And then finally it says here, the only positive part in all of this, other than Rittenhouse being rightfully acquitted, is that thanks to the chaos from last summer, the appetite for, quote, protesters, unquote, causing damage will likely not be as high. I think you're 100% right there. And I think we saw that last night. There wasn't anything going on other than Brooklyn, where people were lined up out there by the Barclays Center. Who knows what they were doing? And did you check out the video of the woman outside the courthouse, basically falling out and going into conniptions and having whatever seizures, whatever it was? I mean, if it was legitimate, you know, we hope she's fine. But that level of anger and just insaneness that they have is just really, really strange. And I'm not sure I'll ever get that. So what are your thoughts on all this? What do you think about these 3 false narratives that we must squash immediately? And what do you think about the verdict? Do you think it was a proper acquittal? Probably most of you will. But if you look at the Instagram, you'll see there's some people out there who still want to cling to these lies, and they have no justification other than saying, well, if you have a gun you don't have the right to defend yourself. That's where they've come down to. They've moved the goalpost so much, that's where we are now. Let me know in the comments below. I'd be curious to know what you think. And also, we invite you to check out our membership site called The Gate. It's free. You can get on there. We have videos that YouTube does not like. And you can go there by going to gate.theconservativetake.com. And if you like what we do on this channel, where we take pop culture and politics and filter it to you in a conservative manner, then please check out some more videos that we have for you right